Okay. Hey, everyone. Just waiting for Brana to come on. Today's Instagram Live is about finding calm or creating calm during the Pesach season, during Passover. We're just going to wait. Let's see. Let's invite Brana here. Okay. So we're just inviting Brana to join. Today's conversation is honestly a conversation between two people. Hey, Brana. Hi. Good afternoon.
Hey, this
It just
is
turned afternoon like a second ago. Hold on, I'm just propping this up because I know what happens is that when we split the screen, here, you get to see like half of my face. Okay.
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 Is this? Let's see. Hold on. Let's see if we could do this. Let me get my charger. Okay. Is it good?
Perfect. Yeah, this is wonderful. So today's conversation, oh yeah, go Brana. Today's conversation is between myself, Esther, and Brana Harris. It's the first time Brana's on here, so we're gonna roll out the carpet for our amazing Brana, who's joined the integrative team. And today's conversation is gonna be all about like finding and creating calm or some tools to be able to navigate the Pesach season, right? Like the time right now, time of year, and navigating stressors that come up. And I think like there's lots of times where we have extra levels of stress or just need or certain triggers that come up. So Brana and I, actually, to the credit of Sarahana Siegel, a different one of our incredible clinicians, right, in our team meeting, Brana, what was the conversation again that happened? What happened? Do you remember? I think Laura was like, "Are we doing Instagram lives?" Because we kind of took a pause from it. Yeah.
Right. And then you were like, I guess after Pesach. And Sarah Khan is like, no, do one before Pesach. And then I was like, that's a great idea, Sarah Khan. You should go for it. And she's like, and then you're like, no, Brana, you're going to go for it. And I was like, oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah,
And
because
we are.
the two of you started talking about the fact that like Pesach time is really stressful, and it's not about like after. It's about like, hey, sometimes we want to have a conversation, right? So anyway, I just want to take a moment before we dive into the conversation to introduce Brana Harris. Brana is an incredibly wise and humble and skillful clinician. I am so excited that our team is privileged to have Brana on the team. Brana is a licensed marriage and family therapist, right? And is trained in a number of methods, including mindfulness and EMDR, and works with women, right? And young adults. So do you want to tell us just a little bit about who you are personally and professionally, and then we'll dive into this conversation?
Sure. So I'm actually from LA. And that is where I grew up, and that's where I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. And I moved out here. I'm, thank God, a mother of 4 little ones, and I have been in practice, I believe, like 6 or 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really passionate about this and happy and grateful that I have this like forum, this practice to be able to use the skills, my personal life experiences to give back to other people and help other people.
Mm-hmm. And I know Brana just from our work together and just knowing Brana, a lot of her area of expertise is working with women. Out here, for the person asking, is out here in New York. You know, New Yorkers sometimes feel like we're the center of the world and everyone else is around us, you know? We should name that. We're in New York. We're in Long Island, right? Or for Rockaway, 5 towns,
Yeah.
New York, from California. But we welcome love and wisdom and interactive conversations with anyone, all around. So, but Brana has experience and is really skillful at working with women, navigating anxiety, depression, right, and processing through trauma. So let's dive in, Brana. How about we talk about this time of year? You know, people kind of have a reaction sometimes when we talk about like Pesach or when we talk about really any holiday. I think we were talking about this, like any a holiday time or any kind of significant event on the calendar. It could be related to like a spiritual event, like we're talking about, like Pesach, could bring things up emotionally, but really anything. Like I think sometimes we talk about like it's almost like taking a highlighter to our unresolved issues or anxieties or triggers, or if your marriage is going through a hard time, or if you're single, or if your child is navigating a certain struggle, or if you're not feeling fulfilled, or whatever it is, or you're spiritually conflicted. This would be a time that like a lot of that bubbles to the surface.
Definitely. Especially since you're going to be with family. Oftentimes you'll be with family, or if not, you may be alone, which may be triggering. That when you're put back in that situation, so if let's say you are not with family and you have to then rejoin, it might bring up stuff. Like you said, if let's say you're struggling as a parent, even now you have people that are watching you, and the pressure of that, your parenting, and either the dynamics between in-laws or your own family, it could bring up a lot of stuff. So I personally feel like before we're thrown into it, to be more mindful before going in and having tools so that we can walk in a little more equipped to face challenges that may come up.
Yeah. And I wonder if I could just add on to that. So when we talk about like walking in, I feel like we're already in it. What I mean is like sometimes it's like, okay, a holiday starts like the night of Yontif, right? Like next week. I looked at my calendar. I'm like, oh my God. But I think there's something about like we go through phases, or we look at the calendar and it's like we're in a phase, like we're in spring, right? So we're in like, for some people it's spring break, but for us it's, let's say, Pesach season, right? So there's almost this piece of like, how do we were talking about this, which I loved, which you were talking about like the preparatory aspects of skills, the preparatory aspect, and we have some awesome notes and ideas that Brana came up with. But almost the concept of preparing, I think I told you this, right? Like sometimes it's like almost comparable to like when you have a hole in the roof, right? So when it's raining, you're not going to go and fix it because it's too rainy outside, right? So that's like when we're in crises, or when we're sitting at like a meal, or if we're thinking about like an extended period of time and it's like, darn, I don't like my friends, or darn, I'm going to have this trigger with my husband or my in-laws, or I feel really lonely, or oh my goodness, oh my goodness, all my infertility stuff, or whatever it is that's triggering or sensitive, right? So there's almost like a, when it's raining, that's not the time to prepare, right? And it's also like, let's say when it's sunny, you think, oh, there's no rain coming in. If you have a hole in your roof, why should I fix it? But essentially, if we want to be mindful, right, and prepare ahead of time, then we think about tools and almost even practicing tools, right? Brana, you came up with one of those exercises that we'll talk about, which is like, how can you almost like prepare? And I'd rather you be over prepared than under prepared, right? To expect like it might feel a little lonely or painful or stressful or triggering or whatever it is. And this is really a skill for life, right? Like how do we try to preempt, or just like normalize and have a conversation even between us, the two of us here, anyone listening right now or to the recording, like just thinking about a struggle that they have or they might have, whatever it is. And we might not even name your struggle, right? Some people on here might have a completely different struggle than we're even naming.
Right.
But just like acknowledging that between you and yourself, and then maybe coming up with a plan for that. So.
Right. And as we know, also, we're going to be put into the situation, and we can't control our surroundings. We can't control a mother-in-law that may, give an opinion that we don't like appreciate, or we can't control the way our husband's going to respond to something, right? But we can control what's happening within ourselves. And that's what we're going to try to work on here, is to gain tools that, like you said, it's not just about Pesach necessarily, but especially because it could be triggering, anxiety provoking, a lot of different feelings may come up. So to be given a few skills to walk into Pesach with.
Yes. Do you want to, I saw your notes here about like the concept of mindfulness and pausing. Do you want to share a little bit about that, kind of giving the background, and then we'll do like a little exercise?
Yeah, sure. Okay, just so for my own knowledge, how does this work? Like people come on, off. I'm just
like, hey, come on here. Yeah. So Brana is one of the people who I adore and admire for many different reasons. But one of them is that she does not have Instagram, and she downloaded Instagram just for this. So dear darling, thank you for being open-minded and creative. So wait 1 second. The way that it works, Brana, because you're just like, why are people rolling in and rolling out? And what are the comments and things like that?
Yeah.
So what's happening is that it's live on the page. So people like hop on, and some stay on and are watching it, and then some might go off. So you're going to see on the bottom probably like names that are popping up. It's being saved. So kind of me and you are just having a conversation, and other people are listening in. Some people might comment, ask a question. As the question might come up, I might respond to it or like bring it up a little later in the conversation. But yes.
So people could ask stuff. They can ask questions and comment.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So to start, was actually pretty cool. I was running the idea past my husband, and he's more of like, is there a source for it? Like, don't just do fluffy stuff.
Like scholarly, he's like, okay, let's find an anchor in the Torah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So he's like, where's the source? Like, don't just pull it from wherever you want. So actually, according to Mesilas Yesharim, I believe it's a Path of the Just. Is that the English? It says that it was perfect exactly for Pesach. Paro's plan was to keep the Jews so busy that there was absolutely no time for inner introspection and inner focus, to the point that it completely was nullified. And it specifically said that. It said he wanted them to get to a point that they had absolutely not a second to stop and introspect and to connect to themselves, right? And that was Paro's plan. And now, in our day, we still have that problem. And the problem is that the Yetzer Hara gets us to do that. So the evil inclination will keep us so busy. Always, I need to be doing something. I need to be busy. And if I'm not busy, then I'm busy with distracting myself so that I feel busy. And the idea is so that we don't have a second, literally a second, a moment to pause, to stop, and to just be present in the moment and kind of reflect, like, what am I doing here? What is happening right now in my life? The bigger picture, the smaller picture, and giving yourself just literally a few minutes to pause and to reflect and introspect.
So I wonder, can I just pause for a second? So basically what we're talking about is like, we're giving the backdrop of, let's say specifically we're talking about like Pesach, Passover. It's a holiday where like the Jewish people are kind of celebrating freedom, right? Or like redemption from like being in exile where Jewish people were slaves. So kind of just like the backdrop was kind of like there is this like Jewish history piece, right? Where the Jewish people had to work really hard and they didn't even have a moment to pause, right? There was no mindfulness capacity. It's kind of like when we're in survival, right? So they're in this place of chronic like exhaustion that they had no, and the whole point of Paro, right? Like the leader then was like, there is no, he wanted to specifically like distract them and rob them, right? So there's like the physical exhaustion, but there's almost this mental piece of like, you don't have time and space to reflect on your experience of life and who you are. So there's that piece, and the concept of like, the whole concept of Passover is all about, or Pesach is all about like redemption, right? Freedom. And I think sometimes when we're going through like spiritual concepts or Jewish people talk about holidays, we almost like feel disconnected or disenchanted from the story. And sometimes, I know how you said your husband like was talking about like, let's look at the source. I know there's times where like my son is learning something in school about like the weekly reading, right, from the Parsha. And I'm like, and it sounds very nice. And I'm like, okay, let's go through it. And then it's like, wait, is there some wisdom? Is there a lesson that I can learn? Because I really do believe in like spirituality, and there's teachings that really can help us transform whatever our experience is. Because there's mundane, but life is about mundane, and it's all about using that instead of like, oh, let's wait for our kids to be like perfectly okay or for things not to be stressful. It's like, can you find the wisdom or the reality or the growth that can happen there? So so basically the concept of like the history of the exile, and then you're basically talking about the concept of so to speak, from a Jewish perspective, is like the evil inclination. To me, I'm also hearing it of like almost like our inner critic. It's almost like we don't have like a leader who's like forcing us to be a slave, but we have become enslaved to either our critical voices or constant distraction or like social media, right? Or other kinds of things that almost rob us, and then we almost feel enslaved, and we don't get to have the freedom, so to speak, or the experience of being in the moment. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that, because I know you and I were talking about like, what does it mean to be mindful, and practicing mindfulness. And so I hope, so I'm just giving the backdrop, right? Because I think there's like the history, and then it's like, how are we ourselves able to tap into freedom, and what does that actually look and feel like?
Right. Exactly. And I personally, I want to, if everybody's willing to, would like to do like a little mindfulness meditation to see like what that's like, to just pause and be present and like feel like what it's like to be in the moment, in your own body. But before I like, it's a lofty idea that a person could stop for 5 minutes of their day and sit and be mindful. That would be an ideal thing to do. But I was even just thinking, because we were talking about on the phone, that like just taking small steps, right? Because in order to get out of our own exile and to feel free, if we're just like, oh, how do I break free from this? We need to take those small steps first. So I was just thinking that possibly even just pausing literally for 3 seconds before we have to do a task, so that we could just stop and reflect what we're doing, like what's going on. So like, let's say you're like, okay, I have to run and do carpool, I have to I have to go do laundry, I have to go do my homework, I have to go do whatever it is. Like, stop, 3 seconds. If you want to do more, great. If you want to do less, where am I going? What is my goal here? I'm going to do my, let's say you're in college, I'm going to do my homework. Like, wow, I'm in a college and what am I working towards? Or I'm going to pick up my kids, I have kids. Or I'm going to my job and what is my job? And I feel fulfilled, right? So just taking those 3 seconds to stop and reflect on our lives and what we're doing.
I love that you're saying that, Brana,
Yeah,
because you're talking about the concept of pausing. And I love how you even spoke about like, let's work on like a little snippet at a time, because you and I were talking about sometimes we'll read like a self-help book or even on an Instagram live. And sometimes people talk about these beautiful, lofty concepts of change. And it's like, there is no way I'm healing a relationship dynamic or changing this person in my life in a different kind of way overnight. So it's like, can I
right,
create even like a 5% shift, or can I even like do a small step, because it's like the small consistent steps that allows for a change, right? So
right.
even the concept of pausing, like the right, like almost like the zooming out for a moment. So I love how you just kind of said that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and the idea is also just for mindfulness, the mindfulness practice is to bring our focus on the here and now, and to bring a sense of calm and possibly introspection. That would be, ideal if we could get to that point. Do you think we could try to do a
Let's do
mindfulness
it.
practice? Should
Let's
we try?
do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Should we ask like the people on if they, or should we just go with it? Just
So
go
it's
for it.
basically like when we do a mindfulness practice, so if you're listening for a few moments, if you're listening, um, then we invite you, if you can, to kind of join us. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of read from a script, and I'll invite all of you that are on here or whoever is going to be listening to the recording to join along with us if you're comfortable. So wherever you are at this moment, if you could begin by getting comfortable in a seated position, one where you're sitting up straight, but you're not sitting up rigidly straight. It's a position of ease. You can close your eyes or lower your gaze toward the floor. Take a few deep breaths in through your nose and out. As you're doing this, get a sense of your body sitting here, and also a sense of where you're starting this moment from, physically, emotionally, mentally. Is there any tension or tightness anywhere? What emotions are present? Is the mind busy or calm? Begin to recognize this body naturally breathing. This body is full of sensations, from warmth to coolness. You may feel some achiness or pressure, itchiness. Perhaps some areas don't have any feelings at all. Whatever is being experienced, just allow it, let it be, being curious about what's here. If at any point the mind wanders, just see where it wandered. Touch that thought for a moment, recognize it as if it was your own reflection in the water, and gently go back to the sensations in your body. Bring awareness to the thoughts themselves. Even the thought, I don't know what I'm doing, is a thought. As you take a few more deep breaths in You want to breathe in a sense of freedom, whatever that means to you. And exhale any confinement or restraints. In this moment, envision yourself breaking free from that which holds you back for being who you want to be. Feel a sense of freedom from the old self as you embrace this new moment and the possibilities that come along with it. Let go of the sense of control and feel liberated, knowing that God is in control. When you're ready, you can bring your focus back to the room and gently open up your eyes. Okay.
Brana Harris, can I come to you for a therapy session? You are.
Sorry, it broke up. What did you say?
Oh, I said, Brana Harris, can I come to you for a therapy session? I said, can I come to you for a therapy session? I really like that. Thank you.
I just wanted to also mention that, I just wanted to mention also, I rushed through it a little bit, went through it a little fast, just because I know that we are on a time constraint here. And I want people to feel a sense of like what it's like, but not with getting completely, it could take some time, and it takes also a lot of practice. Like you said before, it's not when there's rain coming down that you want to necessarily start practicing it, but when it's sunny, so that when the rain starts to come, you have the tools to utilize.
Yeah. I think the thing about mindfulness, first of all, I think you did an amazing job. I think the thing about mindfulness or any kind of meditation is that some of us are more receptive to it. I know at different times in my life, if somebody told me to meditate or to do a mindfulness activity, I would resist it, and for good reason. Like if I have too many racing thoughts or if I'm anxious, like for me, sometimes at that point in time, it's like rather go on a walk where I need movement. And sometimes we could tap into like slowing down and kind of meditating. So I just want to name that because I love how you're saying that. Like this is a little lengthy. And in the beginning, I actually noticed myself like being distracted. I loved how you said like even just the thought of what am I doing here? But just kind of following my own breath for myself. For some people, right, that was helpful. I think for some people, kind of engaging in a lengthy meditation exercise. I love the part that you like that resonates, and some could be like literally just doing like noticing the pace of their breath, right? The breathing in and the breathing out. Any practice is really personalizing it to yourself and who you are. There's something you said in the meditation that I want to comment on. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So when you spoke about kind of like breathing in freedom and letting go of any things that burden us, I just want to highlight that for a minute, like really freedom, right? Or any kind of therapy or any kind of healing or any kind of growth, I'll just say, is about like the breathing into something and the letting go of something. By the way, a few people are for the meditation, so you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
So I think real growth, or this thing called life, which sometimes feels glorious and sometimes feels hellish and sometimes feels confusing and sometimes feels really clarifying, right? Because that's this toss up of this beautiful thing where we get to grow and do life and evolve and leave a legacy and be who we are, is this blend of like how are we growing or how are we challenging and how are we kind of letting go of these like burdens that we hold or beliefs. It could be traumas, it could be these legacy burdens, maybe like negative self-concepts or inner critics or a version of ourselves that we need to move past or kind of expand beyond, right? We sometimes we have these inadequacies or worries or anxieties that really burden us, right? And they don't change the snap of a finger. But if we could almost look at like, what is freedom really? It's about like naming it, acknowledging it, developing a relationship with the struggle, right? You and I were talking about this, like change and healing isn't just a matter of like, oh, you have anxiety, let's flush it down the toilet and la 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 la, I will be someone who meditates all day. It's like, no, in our world that doesn't happen, right? But I loved how you said like almost challenging or letting go of certain versions of ourselves. Like, is there one small thing about yourself that you kind of want to shift a little, or that you kind of want to challenge a little.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I also wanted to point out, though, for the mindfulness, it may work for some people and it may not work for other people, like you said. But that's why we discussed like trying to do some sort of maybe something somatic, a tool that can actually help you feel grounded, because people may not relate to the mindfulness, which is fine, or it may take practice also.
Can I say something on that for one
Yeah.
second? You dive in. So Brana came up with this very cool, like somatic, like body exercise, like a brief one about like a way to self-soothe, feeling agitated, or if you're having a hard time being present. And before we go there for a second, can I say something?
Yeah.
So Brana, I wonder if someone's listening to this meditation, or I wonder if someone's noticing that they have anxiety, right? And if we're talking about it working, like I wonder if we could expand what the definition of working is. And let me tell you why. Right now in this meditation, I was able to engage, and I also noticed a thought, okay, like a worry I have. So I could tell you this meditation didn't work for me. Or I could say it worked because I realized I could tap into this, or I had a hard time tapping into this, but I'm realizing there's a worry I have that needs some attention. And just by the fact that I'm noticing there's a worry in my mind that I wasn't really paying attention to, and I realized that it probably needs some attention, and maybe like a behavior or something planning around that, that actually is helpful. So meaning when we do a meditation, I just want to name this, like when someone says, can you slow down, and you notice a reaction or an anxiety, that can actually be an invitation of like, wow, so you think about slowing down, you get very panicky. What's the panic about? We're not going to push the panic away. Like, wow, so you're actually thinking about the fact that, you have a phone call later today and you're really nervous about that phone call. Yeah. So let's just notice that, right? There's this worry. And is there someone you have to reach out to, or is there some planning you need to do, or do you need some kind of support around that so you can tend to that? So I just want to say that even if when you slow down, you're hit with like fear or worry or an anxiety,
Right.
that in itself can be a positive, even though you didn't achieve calm.
Right.
I want to say that. It's just that
Exactly.
there's more, some chains have more links on the chains, right? Like for some people, it's like you do a meditation and you're calm. For other people, it's like you slow down, you notice an anxiety, you have to make a change, you have to make a shift. You notice there's an issue that probably has some layers to it. You're starting to reach out to a friend, or you're making a better plan for whatever it is that you need. And then you're tending to a bigger issue. So there might be more layers to it, but you're beginning to tend to an issue because some of them are multi-layered, but you're still working towards a shift. So I just want to name that. Okay.
Right.
Fine. Okay.
And also, just to
Yeah.
bring it back to what we were saying before, is that the idea is that it is a pause in our lives. So it gives space to stop and reflect, and like either it bringing a sense of calm. And if it doesn't, you said another thing is that recognizing the thoughts that kind of pass through as you're more present. So either one actually can be very, very beneficial.
Right. Meaning even if there's, right, because I'm thinking about problems that can actually be tended to. There's also a piece, because I love what you're saying, that there are some things in our lives that we cannot change, right? There are some things that, like, I don't care how much you plan or how much you work around, or, it's like there are some things that it's like, how can I be and how can I notice and how can I create a level of distance from this current reality or challenge, that the only thing I can do is kind of just notice it from a place of distance and just breathe, right, along the best of my ability. Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to say that I feel like because this is a short segment, and we're trying to like bring everything in, it's kind of snippets, but I want people to be able to leave today with at least something that they could walk away with and arrive and be like, okay, I have this small little tool, and I can make a small little change, so that small little change will help, build more and more. Should we now try
Yes.
the
So yeah, let's do the next thing. So basically, Brownie, you're basically saying like we're not diving in. We're not like giving like a one-course meal. That's very savory. We're saying like here's a palette. We're
right?
gonna give you a little snippet of each. And if you're listening, like I know I've been to speeches or trainings, and they say if you take just one tiny thing, that's gonna work. And honestly, sometimes I take just one tiny thing, and that helps me, and I forget everything else. So you're
Right.
basically saying like we're gonna be giving you a few ideas, take what works, try it, whatever doesn't, leave.
Exactly. And like within each one, obviously there's so much more to explore, so much more to delve into. But like you said, even if you get just like a little taster, a little piece of it is at least, you get something to walk away with. Okay. So basically we were thinking about an exercise that we could do that is grounding, especially, let's say, even during the Seder. It could be, we were describing a Seder, like a lot going on, and reading, and this person is maybe start a different conversation and they're arguing, and then your kid knocks over grape juice and now it's all over you, need to change. Just a lot of like hectic stuff going on. So you might be like, I'm not walking away and going to like do some mindfulness. Like my kids are here. Like it's not.
Like, what are you talking about? There's no like Zen until like summer vacation.
Right. So there might not be so much opportunity for that time to have mindfulness, or you may have time, whatever it is. If you could fit it in, great. But you might not. You might have to still be at that Seder table. So something that I thought of that Esther said that approved of.
I didn't approve of it. I was like, yay, I can't wait to do this myself.
Okay. Because it was kind of like just an idea, but I know that you have more of the knowledge and experience with it. Is to literally just take your own hand, to hold your own hand, right? And this is an exercise that you can do anytime, anywhere. And that the idea is that it's from within, right? You're not seeking from somewhere else or your own. And there's times to seek from other people and to help from other people. But this idea is to hold your own hand and to basically gently stroke it. It could be under the table even. Like, you don't have to do it publicly. It can be under the table, so no one sees it. It's just you and yourself.
Could we invite people to do this right now? And can I add on to this? In somatic training, sometimes like the somatic practitioner will say, literally, like, because we're talking about, right, being out of touch with our bodies and kind of mindfully coming back in. If anyone's watching, right, whoever's watching right now, I would literally invite you to do this. You just notice your right hand, right? Because Brana, your hands are probably under. You notice your right hand, okay, and the skin, and just the touch, right? And then notice your left. And what Brana's talking about is like, you're going to take your hand, and I want you to just like rub, right, or stroke, or like massage your left hand. And just as you do that, just notice what it feels like. Notice if there's a warmth. Notice if you could feel, the sensation from the right fingers, right, onto the left hand. And then notice the feeling, of the left hand, right, or the area or the fingers being touched by the right, right? There's like different sensations. So it's the right onto the left, and then the feeling of the skin just making contact with the right, right? And you could do whatever you want. Like, it could be rubbing your hands, right? Noticing both the right and the left, noticing the space between. So we're really almost like getting in touch with our bodies and just like sensation. Right? And you might like harder touch, like really like a massage, like a deep massage, right? Like I'm liking right now, like more of the pressure, right? And for some people, it's kind of just like the soft.
Right.
So yeah, Brana, you take it away. What were you going to say? Sometimes, I
want to add to what you're explaining though. Like, just right now, my experience is almost like what you kind of wish to get from someone else. Like that, like when you're like feeling overwhelmed, or right? Like sometimes people want to be touched, sometimes they don't. But like just that, like, you're doing okay. You're doing great. And it comes over to you, and like whether it gives you a hug or just holds on or holds your hand or just like gives you that like, right, reassurance. But the idea is that it comes from within, right? Because you might not get that reassurance, especially when things are going on. No one's reassuring you right now. But if you start getting overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, this is just too much, I can't, right? Just stop and pause and do exactly what you just said.
So what you're talking about is the somatic piece of like, can you even just slow down? Getting in touch, like there's this somatic exercises, just like engaging with like touch, because a lot of times when we're anxious or overwhelmed, we get stuck in our minds, right? We're the panic. I'm overwhelmed. I'm freaking out. I'm going to panic. I'm getting dizzy. This is too much. I'm a failure, right? My life is a mess, or whatever it is, right? Happened with my marriage, whatever, or I'm lonely, or nothing's ever going to be good, right? So you're in the issue right there. So it's almost like, can you for a moment just like get into your body or just feel your skin? And then you're talking about pairing it with an inner kind of affirmation, or almost like a self-belief. It's the whole concept of like self-nurturance, which we're not, that's a whole separate conversation where we could talk about, right? Because essentially good healing and good growth is about being able to nourish ourselves And especially sometimes when we haven't gotten the nourishment, and even when we have, like really being an adult, like I think we spoke about this, right? In relationships, not in relationships, it's all about like how do we have a relationship with ourselves and how do we have a voice, right? Healthy people are people who have like inner nourishing, loving voices to themselves, right? And especially if you're with people who do love you or who are challenging to you, even when you're around people who do care, lots of times people are overwhelmed. So it's like sometimes like how do I self-soothe in this moment? So you're saying match it with words, right? For you, there's something about like almost imagining the, hey, hon, like you got this, or you're doing great, right? Like the, and people, by the way, instead of the hand, they could be like, I know there's times where I'll just be somewhere and I'm I like the being squeezed. Like I have a sister who always loves being massaged here.
Yeah.
So there's something about even sensory, like if you want to kind of like give yourself like a little tight squeeze, right? So just that sensation and matching it with kind of what you said, the words. And I know we have some of these quotes right here, or some of these terms. Can I read some of them?
Yeah, please.
So for any of you, like if you're feeling anything, right? You could be walking towards a meal, you could be in the grocery store shopping, you could even just be sitting down and thinking about like an incident that's going to be coming up, or a person you're interacting with, or right at the Seder, and things are going on. All right, your husband drank too much wine, somebody's being annoying, you're feeling whatever feelings you're feeling inside, or nothing's happening, but you're just feeling a big emotion. So, right, doing this, like the somatic thing of like touching or even feeling your feet on the ground, and matching it with like a short phrase, right? So I'm just going to give some that we came up with, right? One was like, I am good enough, right? Another one was, in this moment, I am okay, right? Another term is, this too shall pass. This, whatever this is, this too, this emotion, this moment, this too shall pass at some point. It might, there was a quote we once came up with on our social media. It said like, this too shall pass. It might pass like a freaking kidney stone, but it's going to pass. Like sometimes it's like, what do you mean it's going to pass?
And in both, and it's funny because in both directions, there's times that things pass really fast. So this too shall pass, appreciate it because it's going to be gone soon.
Yes.
But it's also what you're explaining, that like this too shall pass. And it's like, sweetie, I've been dealing with it. And it's like, right. But everything in life and just knowing it will. And especially as you're trying to work on yourself, work on whatever it is, even if it's teeny steps, recognizing those small steps that it is passing. It is, you know what I'm saying? Some sort of change is happening
in life, right? So I love how you're talking about both, right? Like good moments pass. So I know for myself, I was in the car, and then we'll come back to some of the other terms, but I was in the car with one of my sisters the other day picking my son up from school, and I was talking to her about like something that was worrying me, and she said, one second, do you notice in this moment that I'm your sister and I love you, and we're spending like the afternoon together, and I had an appointment specifically at this time. She also had like something that was worrying her at the time. She's like, but I'm just taking a moment to appreciate that you and I together are sitting on this incredibly long carpool lane, but we're together. And could we just like say like, hey, I'm with you and you're with me and we're in this moment, and together we're spending like the time together, and like how amazing. And first I was annoyed with her because I was like rambling and I'm like, you're not listening to me. And then I was like, actually think, because she's like, what we have is this moment right here, right now. And I still had my stuff on my mind and she still had her stuff, but there was something about like in this moment, right? So there's almost like, can you be in the moment and the beautiful parts of it? Because those moments are moments to cherish, right? And then there's also moments that are difficult, and being like, there are things that move, like the whole process of life, right? It's like old skin leaves and something new comes. The whole thing with spring is like, right, we plant something, the seed starts rotting, it feels kind of gross, and then something slowly starts blossoming, right? Life is always about that.
Can I add one more thing actually to that? So I feel like actually describing what we're talking about, right? Even in the Seder, like it took a lot for each person to get to that place of the Seder physically. And the person could just keep going, right? So they might have planned this Pesach a week ago. It might have been planned months ago. And it's here. It's arrived. They're in this moment. And oftentimes you get so caught up though in like, okay, but that, what's happening next? And what are we up to? And whatever, like what are holiday plans? And hold on. You have been looking forward to this moment for a very long time. You've arrived. Now hold it and recognize it. Right? And even just
Mm-hmm.
whether you're an overwhelming feeling, right? And you might want to do this, or just being present and like, hold on, stop, look around. Look, I'm with my family. I haven't seen them in a long time and I'm here. Or maybe otherwise, look, I'm with my family and it's very difficult, but I'm still okay. And I can survive, like one of the quotes that we said, I can survive this discomfort, and in both, but it's coming back almost to the being present and pausing, that
Yeah.
instead of just letting life happen, even in the preparation, if people are cleaning or people are packing up, if people are whatever it is, like, hold on, let's pause again, zoom out, like you said, zoom out, zoom in, like, what's the bigger picture here? Like, we're celebrating Pesach, freedom, like, okay, now let's zoom in. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, but like, going with that feeling and whatever phase that you might want to say, that I'll
Yeah.
get through this.
Yeah, I love how you're saying that, right? Like I can survive comfort, or be here now, or just breathe.
Right.
Right. And I love how you're saying this piece, Brana, because I think that there's two pieces, kind of what you're just talking about is like when we're able to slow down, we're able to almost like hold the dialectics of like both, right? So it's kind of like, can I notice, let's say, the parts, because we all have things that are difficult and things hopefully that are joyous. And I do have to say, and so kind of just noticing both, right? Like I might have made a yummy dish and I'm so excited about it, or I might have a dress that I like, or the weather might be nicer, but I have someone really annoying I'm going to deal with. And I'm giving very simplistic answers because it could be like externally everything looks fine, but internally you're navigating something, right? Or there's an issue, or somebody's not feeling well, or. But I think there's this other piece, Brana, that for some people, holiday time, Yom Tovim, are very hellish. Just want to say. So
Mm-hmm.
for some people, like there are also people or situations or whatever it is, there might be a social situation or whatever situation that you're in where this particular time is difficult for you. And this is not just about holidays. This could be like a specific, like an anniversary, like on the calendar. It could be if you've gone through a trauma. It could be that you went through a difficult time in your life, or you're navigating something. If you're going through like a depressive episode, you have anxiety at this time, or you have a specific challenge. I just want to say to that, like sometimes success is about just putting one foot in front of the other and just getting through. I remember once learning, like they were talking about in like a Torah class about what does it mean to be like successful at a nisayon, right? Like which is like a spiritual struggle or a challenge in life. And I remember I was learning like holy concepts of like of becoming a better person, or to become this, or to be above and beyond. And I remember a person once saying to me, I really respected and respect, was like sometimes going through a hard time, success is moving through it. That's success. Just walking,
Yeah.
like literally. So there's a Thursday and a Friday and a Shabbos and a Sunday, like just physically getting up and getting dressed and not self-neglecting, making sure you don't go to sleep too late, making sure that you're taking care of like the basics of like you're washing your face, right? So it's like, what are the basic things that you can do, especially when people are out of schedule, right? Sometimes people saying like, there's things that come up for them. It's like, what are the basic things that you can do, some basic structure to help yourself if this is particularly a difficult time for you, or you feel like if you feel dissociated or disconnected or overwhelmed, and something like that. I saw someone's comment right here, right? Somebody wrote like talking about noticing jealousy, right? The little jealousy jelly or stuff that come up, which I think happens always, but specifically like Yom Tovim time or any time where we could notice people are going to grand programs, they have different finances. I think jealousy can also come when some people have different family dynamics. Some people might have more family or more support, or simpler family situations, or emotional situations, or financial situations, right? And I just want to name the fact social situations. So I think just like acknowledging that, kind of what you were talking about, like we were talking about this, like there's the zooming in and the zooming out. Like when it comes to times like this, sometimes we are hyper focused on things in our life, and sometimes those things kind of are like, wow, this is amazing, I finally get to bond with people. Or it could be like, this is kind of raw,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even just like noticing that and seeing what you can do. I know for my own stuff, like I keep my own personal world kind of small because I have like my few people who I adore and who are supportive and who are loving, right? I think like sometimes it's like, how can you keep your world, right? Or your focus, or keep your focus on appreciating or focusing on the things that you are doing that bring you joy, that bring you love, that bring you growth, right? And when you have support when things are difficult. And I think the zooming out, Brana, which we could talk about, is kind of like sometimes we get back into rhythm. I know so many clients have told me, or even friends, like once we get back into routine, for some people, it's like the holiday is the time, or Pesach is the time they finally get to bond, right, with our loved ones. And for some people, like they breathe, right? They're like, oh, finally we're back to reality. Oh, okay, I'm back to doing therapy, or I'm back to my schedule, or I'm back to feeling successful because in this, my family structure, like no one thinks no one values me, or there's so much chaos, right? So even just noticing like there's dual realities that you live in, even if you go into a bubble for some time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, should we ask if that was clear to the person? Like, did we answer her question?
Oh, like the jealousy piece?
Yeah.
I don't know if like we should ask, because I know there's some more stuff and I want you to kind of attend to it. I
Okay.
think she's kind of naming the fact of jealousy that comes up for all of us. Like I remember once listening to someone who was like, everyone in this room should take a red paper, a red marker, and write like, I am jealous. And I remember looking at her like she was nuts. And then she was like, we're all jealous. We're human beings. The question is like, how much do we allow the jealousy monster to gobble up the joy and the beauty that we have in our lives? Because we all get jealous.
Right.
So I think she said thank you. I think it's about acknowledging that we can get jealous and we do get jealous. And then the second piece is what can you do to appreciate or to focus on what you have? And for some people, it could be like, I'm so grateful that I'm learning about my anxiety because I'm learning to take better care of myself so I can improve my quality of life. I'm so grateful that I'm realizing that I had really, really bad boundaries because I'm realizing that my relationships have been toxic for me and I'm starting to make a shift. It doesn't have to be lofty. Or I'm so grateful I'm realizing that certain foods are better for me, or going to sleep at a certain time is better for me, right?
Right.
Whatever. So yeah.
That's the last point actually that I
Go on.
That's it. Is that we're all in our own exiles, right? Individually. We're all in exile as a whole, as a Jewish community, but we're all also in our own exiles, right? Our own things that hold us back from becoming free from who we want to become and who we want to be and our purpose that we're here for. And as we work on becoming free from those things that hold us back, we gain our freedom, right? So as we work on it, the more free we become.
I love that. Yeah, because it's a process, right? Of like the burdens that we carry. It's almost like an unburdening, like in IFS, right? Parts language is always about like, because when you're saying about can I hop in on this?
Please.
When you're talking about like our own exile and freedom, if you want to speak from a spiritual standpoint, an emotional standpoint, relational standpoint, right? Because there's different ways we connect, right? There's like physical, spiritual, emotional, sexual, psychological, right? And then there's also social. So there's almost like there's this piece of like it's all about connection and healing and unburdening ourselves so that we can actually be more free and more real and be able to enjoy this thing called life, right? Sorry, so go on, just because I think it's like an ongoing process as we do life.
Yes, definitely. So I wanted to, again, another tool. So I wanted to leave with just a few different tools that people could walk away with. So in order to recreate the moment more positively, it's helpful to first of all be aware of the triggers and how to deal with them properly, right? So knowing that, like we've already discussed, like, okay, what may come up, just taking a few minutes before it happens, like, probably gonna get triggered over there. I might get upset about X, Y, and Z. My kids are gonna be up really late. They're probably gonna like not be too easy to deal with when they're really exhausted. Whatever may come up, to be kind of aware of those triggers. That's again for the Seder, but in general, in life, how to navigate through life is being aware of our triggers so that when they come up, we could better deal with them. And the idea also within that is that oftentimes it can be discouraging. Like, okay, I'm aware of it, but like I've tried so many times and I lost it again, and I got anxious again, and I'm feeling depressed again and again, right? But a concept that I appreciate is that each and every moment is a new moment, right? And if we take it like that and realize, like you said, one step at a time, well, even if your life seems to be like, okay, status quo, but wanting to do more, one step at a time, right? And the idea is to take it slow, because if we just try to be like, I want to be the best person, I want to be calm the entire Pesach and not like lose it on my kids at all, and I want to get along perfectly with my family because I've been working on myself. That's nice, but let's take it down really small.
Right. Right. Setting different kinds of expectations. And I love how you're saying about each moment you begin anew, right? It's like
Right.
you can mess up or you can say something really hurtful. And really being a growth oriented person, it's not about messing up. It's a matter of knowing how to basically say, honey, I raised my voice earlier and it's because I'm really tired. I'm sorry. But in this moment, I'm going to try again. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the repair piece. But I remember we had this actually conversation that Brana and I were talking about. There's two separate things. When we notice our triggers, sometimes, can I hop in here?
Please.
So when we were talking about triggers, we were saying number one, planning for triggers so you can deal
Mm-hmm.
with it. And I think the second piece is knowing when you need more help. And I just want to name, because if I was listening to this kind of conversation a few years ago and someone was saying, map out your triggers and then just take a deep exercise and everything will be good. Sorry, I'm putting on my nasal voice. I would be
Yeah.
like, it's not working, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because if my triggers, let's say I will feel anxious if I'm going into a room where people have, I'm trying to give like if where everybody owns like a house in the Hamptons. I'm giving like a far off example. I don't want a house in the Hamptons. I don't have a house in the Hamptons. Okay. But imagine that was a trigger for me, right? So I could basically be saying like, that's a trigger for me. Okay. So someone could say, well, could you just deal with the thought differently? Now, essentially, if we want to go deeper, what if it's not about the fact that it's about the house in the Hamptons? What if it's like the trigger is I'm jealous that everyone around me has a house in the Hamptons, but if you really take it a little step further, it's like I'm actually jealous that they have more money than me or they have different kind of family support than me. So I just want to name the fact that when you look at triggers, one, it could be practical, and some of these tools are going to help you. And some of these tools are going to help you for this moment. And some of these tools are going to make you realize, actually, there's a bigger trigger, right? So if I was really jealous, not just about the Hamptons, but about family or finances, then a good person who loves me, a therapist or a friend or a mentor would say, hey, darling, the holiday is going to be difficult because you're going to be surrounded by people who in this particular area, you get triggered. But I also think it's helpful if on your own time, before the holiday or after, or sometime in the next few months, you look at your emotions of grief or sadness, right? Or working on what you need
Exactly.
to do to live a beautiful life because there's a lot of pain and sadness there, right? So I just want to name that.
Exactly.
Like
Yes.
we were
Which is
talking
what a
about,
part.
yeah,
Sorry, the part of my notes it was. I added to it that we could be aware of the triggers
yeah,
and we can keep noticing it and keep trying. But sometimes, whether through EMDR and going back through the trauma of like, where is this stemming from? Why is this your trigger? Where did this come from? Trying
yeah.
to find the root of it so that you can then, it won't, you know what I'm saying? It won't be as much of a trigger anymore once you've released that and once you've healed that. And that, like you said, is the deeper work. And of course, you know, ideally, if we could do that with the snap of our fingers, we would, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, which is worth it.
But I
To
want to
get.
say something. I want to
Yep,
say, okay, right.
please.
Basically, we're just naming the fact that sometimes there's triggers that there's tools to deal with, and sometimes there's triggers that you can actually be something deeper. And on the positive of that, I do have to say, Brana, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I have anxiety and something about a holiday or something around being in social situations or something around whatever brings up panic or depression or a trauma reaction or body flashbacks. And this is really uncomfortable for me. So Brana and I are giving a plug for good healing, just saying, right? And right, we're both trained in EMDR. Lots of our clients come in either before Yantif or after or sometime because there's a trigger and they're like, I don't want to suffer so much. And we can't provide like a single session healing, but lots of times we've had clients, I know there were times where people are like calling before Pesach and I'm like, do you want to just start after? And a lot of times people say like, no, I want to start or whatever, the school year, it doesn't matter a specific time. And it's like, no, I want to start before, or I want to commit to, let's say, scheduling for a certain period because I want to mentally know that I'm anchoring myself in some kind of commitment for self-growth or I'm taking care of myself. So when I'm triggered or when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I know I'm beginning the healing process. I just want to name that. And from the other end, I have to say that I know for my own self and my own work in terms of like my self-care practices and my own healing that I have done at different times of my life, I have experienced such shifts in my own life. And I've seen this with so many clients where people talk about, like we're talking about the pain and the struggle, but there are people who literally would talk about how like their holiday or their yontif is such a different experience or just daily life because they did tend to some of the underlying struggles. And there's a shift in terms of like the level of trigger or the level of anxiety. I mean, that's something that at our practice we focus on is like, how do we help people be able to feel less symptomatic so they can experience life? So it's not just like, boom, we're going to try to help you survive Pesach. It's like, how can
Right.
we overall help you reduce the level of reactivity or panic or, right? Kind of that's the whole point of good treatment
Right.
so that you can be present at these times. So it's not just about like this time, but I have to give a plug for it because I've seen it professionally. I've experienced it in my own life. But I just wanted to name this just because like sometimes people will listen to like tools that you're giving, which they're brilliant tools, by the way. And if there's something deeper and, there's something else, I would encourage whoever is listening, like, reach out or become aware of, even if you can't make a change or you're not going to therapy, or if let's say you have a close friend, just like acknowledge whatever is going on. It could be you have a child struggling, or you have a situation where you're feeling like unfulfilled in your life. You could even just look in the mirror or talk to someone you love and just say like, I'm noticing I'm struggling with this and it weighs on me. Right. So even just like one small shift towards something, so that you can make kind of a shift for your own self. So sorry, I hopped in on that.
No, don't be sorry. It's true. And like you said, almost like a zoom out, zoom in. Again, back to that, is that these are practical little tools that I hope will give some sort of a relief of anxiety, of whatever it is that the person is experiencing. But ultimately, it's doing deeper work of like, where is this coming from? Let's uproot that, and like, so that they can ultimately not be triggered by this. And, but that, like you said, that takes more work.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's both. Like, can I just say, I think sometimes it's both. Like sometimes, like I know for myself, there's some times of year or some specific days or seasons that I know are going to be more exhausting and more tiring. And I know I'm going to be more challenged. And I think that like from an internal basis, like I think I spoke to, Believe Me Heller, we spoke about like parenting or some of the other Instagram lives I've done where it's like, like I said, like there's times that I've done my own therapy session or I've done my own like connecting with someone who I love and I feel kind of unburdened and I'm doing healing, and then I'm an incredibly more present person, right? For my own child, or like and that's the deeper healing work, which is like underneath the surface, which I think it needs to be concurrent. Like there's the underlying stuff that we're providing ourselves, or it doesn't even have to be therapy. It could be like, are you feeling unfulfilled or disenchanted or disconnected? Right. And it's like, do you need more time to kind of develop yourself or read books or take time to develop some relationships, whatever it is. So there's almost like the deeper work, but there's also the practical where it's like
exactly
Remember we were talking about this in our team meeting? We were talking about skills and behavioral things. And I think I know for my own self, if I'm living in the clouds in theory, but at the end of the day, like I'm a mom and I need structure and I need routine, like I'm not going to be okay if I don't I think it's like, both right of the stuff. Yeah.
And like you said, from my own experience as well, it's like we can do the deeper work and I want to do that. But sometimes I'm in a situation and I need a tool. We've done the work, we've gone there. And there are times that like amazing success stories, but there are times that I just need a tool right now. We're not going deep. We're just needing practical tool to pause and stop and use to get through this moment.
Right. And it's kind of like, I think you mentioned this, right? Like with EMDR training, it's like you were talking about sometimes clients feel like they were left open. It's almost like, here's your inner child, go home with it. And it's like, no. Like we're going to tuck this away, or sometimes there's a trigger. And it's like, you could look at your inner child or your own emotional struggle and say like, little darling, I'm going to check in on you later. Right now I have like 6 screaming children or a difficult person outside, or, I need to cook dinner, or my body's tired and I'm going to go to sleep and take a breath. And then I'll check in on this bigger thing. So I think it's also like discerning in this moment, do I need a tool? Do I need to make a behavioral shift? Do I need to go outside because I've been cooped up all day?
Right.
Or is there something internally? Do I need a moment to actually check inside, be emotionally attentive, do some inner work, do some journaling, or read, or reach out to someone? So it's also about discerning what's the need, and then how do you tend to that?
Right. So just bring it back to the last point here, that having a practical tool, right, in these moments of feeling stuck or feeling like you're in your own exile and wanting to be freed from that, is taking a really small step. So for example, if a person is suffering with anxiety and they're scared of going on walks for whatever reason, they may get a panic attack, then they may tell themselves, I'm going for 2 minutes. That's it. I'm going for 2 minutes. I'm coming back in, right? And hopefully building off that. So they may be outside for 2 minutes and be like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm going to go for another minute. And as they build off that, they build their self-esteem. They feel within their inner self, right? They are able to break a little bit more away. They're able to become a little more free from their own exile. That's just one example. Another example could be procrastination. So a person might be like, oh my God, I don't know where to start, which I feel that way about cleaning as well. But be like, literally like, I'm just doing my counter, this area, I'll do it for like 5 minutes, or this drawer, I'm doing for 5 minutes. Oftentimes you start, you're like, wait, I'm almost done. Oh, I can keep going. Maybe. And if you don't, than success that you did it for 5 minutes.
And clap after. I just have to say, like, because this is a little bit of exposure.
Yeah.
Sometimes in therapy or any kind of success or with children, with ourselves, saying like, you went on a 2-minute walk and you didn't have a panic attack. I need you to come inside and celebrate. Right. I think we were talking about a meeting with like some of the staff, and we were saying how like we have these treatment goals, and a few of the clinicians were saying like, I've had clients reach treatment goals, but we're like on to the next. And it's like, wait, we need to help develop a neural pathway in our clients' brains and in our own, that when we do something, we have to stop and celebrate. I know it sounds silly, and as adults, we're like, no, I don't need a compliment. Yes, I do. And you want to develop a neural network inside. You went outside for 2 minutes and you navigated anxiety and you didn't have a panic attack, or honestly, you did feel a little anxious, but you went outside, you are a freaking rock star.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the procrastination.
Yes.
Why? Because what I've seen and the scientific research is, you notice this, you develop it a little more, and you deepen it more. Right? So you're giving the brain like positive reinforcement, and then you could create expansiveness, but you start tiny. Sorry, did you have any other ideas before we wrap up?
No, I was just gonna kind of just give a recap to all of this.
Yeah.
Just the 3 points that we touched upon is just trying to pause, being more mindful of where we are, zooming in, zooming out, where we are presently. So doing some mindfulness if you're able to. If not, just pausing for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, stopping. What am I doing? What's my goal? What am I doing here? Which is from CLC Sharm, which is Path of the Just, is what Paro was trying to do, was to stop us from being in exile and not allowing us to have a minute to do inner introspection and to really figure out what we're doing here. So pausing, doing mindfulness is 1 point. Number 2 is
about the CLC Sharm, essentially freedom. Then, if we're talking about the Torah source, so freedom really is about being able to have a relationship with ourselves and with the present moment. So when you pause, you're accessing freedom in a small way.
Okay. Right. And recognizing and stopping and saying, what am I doing here? You were put in the world for a reason. So what am I doing here? What's my goal here? What's my, that's the overall, right? And then it gets to, you need to break it down, because that's overwhelming. Like, what am I doing here, right? And then the second thing is just a grounding exercise, the stroking of the hand and repeating a statement that will help you stay calm. I'm okay in this moment. I'm doing fine. Whatever it is, just to feel grounded if you're needing it at any point throughout Pesach, throughout the preparations, afterwards in your life. And then the last step that we spoke about is taking 1 step towards freeing yourself from your own inner exile. So just kind of naming, figuring out, like we said, the triggers. It could be a lot of deeper work, but trying to just at least right now take a small little snippet so that we can feel the feeling of success and applauding us, or like being proud of ourselves for that small success, so that like you said, we could build off of it. And I just hope that through some of
you were going to wrap up. I want to add
I'm just going to conclude, but if you want to add more.
I think the piece we were talking about behavioral, I think even mental, if you could notice that, like, if you have an unconscious, like almost like a trauma reaction, or if you almost have like this unconscious like belief that is fed to you, and you challenge it. If in your voice, or if in your head you have this voice of like, you're never enough, and you will literally challenge it and you talk back to that voice and you say, in this moment I am enough. Right? So that, when we're talking about tiny little things, even if once a day or once in this week you say, no, actually I am enough, or actually I did a lot today, right? Something even small, even mental, not just like behavioral,
right? And
celebrating that, because tiny little shifts is essentially what allows the shifts to happen. Okay, right. Now you can wrap up. Sorry, I interrupted.
No problem. I was just going to say that I hope through some of these tools that we gave today, that you gain some sort of sense of freedom from your own inner exile, so you can live a more fulfilling life. And ultimately, I guess that we all come out of this exile and we have redemption of God willing soon.
Yeah. I thank you, Brana, so much. I think really like life is about, I know you asked the question of why are we here? I think it's really about, I used to ask this question to people who, you know, like when I was young, like, what's the purpose of this world, or why am I here? And it's really not always so lofty. It's like, what's your life right now? And how can you show up to your life and to yourself in the most honest and real way? And it's really about taking little breadcrumbs and taking little steps. It's never about this huge lofty concept. We all have different missions on this world, but it's essentially like about be here now, what's the situation, what's the reality, what's the emotional, mental, spiritual, right, societal, familial situation right now. What is this? Is this about you finding, peace inside? Is this about building confidence? Is this about having healthier relationships, right? It's so many, for everyone, it's something so different. So I want to thank you, Brana, for coming on. If anyone, I think Brana has like one slot on her caseload. If we could be of help, or if this conversation could be of help, different topic anyone wants us to talk about, we're here. And let's put out loving vibes and support for everyone to kind of just offer themselves the grace of offering kindness and finding small steps of freedom. Brana, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you for the opportunity to
Yes, and
help
happy
people.
Pesach and happy spring for everyone around.
Yes.
Okay.
Take care. Be
Bye.
well.
Bye.